the state of Georgia. In your name, amen. We're glad to have Senator here, Lester Jackson. He's got his bill 354. And committee, if you'll look at it, it's LC, of course, 391943S. You'll notice it is a little longer. Told the senator that I was going to try to help a couple of our committee members by adding a few things to his bill. We're going to add, if you look in section 1, this is Rick Williams' bill, and Rick will talk about that in a minute on the toll-free number. Joyce Chandler's in section 2. Y'all know we've heard that at least 3 times now. And then his is section 4. And if I could get the senator to go ahead and talk about his, I'd sure appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I present to you Senate Bill 354, LC 391943S. I'm going to let you know this. This substitute bill makes Senate Bill 354 even better. It has some good legislation for some of my good friends that serve in the House, and we want to make sure that their legislation becomes law in this great state. Well, my version on section 4 requires the Technical College System of Georgia to classify certain active duty service members as in-state for tuition purposes. Current law does not require active duty service members to be classified as in-state tuition for our technical systems. If you should find favor, this legislation requires the Technical College System of Georgia to classify active duty service members who physically reside in the state of Georgia, who would otherwise not be classified as out of state for tuition purpose as in-state. We do it for Hope Scholarship. This now does it for Hope Grant. Simply put, we do a great deal for our service members. This is just one more measure to thank our service members for the job they're doing and let them be able to go to technical school at a lower cost. We're going to have other members speak to section 1 and section 2. That explains section 4. I urge your humble support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Senator, it's not true that TCSG isn't here. I don't see Neil here. But that current practice of TCSG is to do this. They're doing it now. This is putting it in code.
Right, that, yes. Yeah.
That they're being very cooperative, you know, with all of our guard units and doing that for them now. This just really verifies it, locks it down.
Right, it is a practice, but they don't have to do it.
Right.
This is just making sure that the next president or the next chancellor of the technical systems will know that they have to do it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Any of the committee members have a question for Senator on this one? Okay, if we'll jump over there to section 1 on the front, if Representative Williams, if you will, what number are you? 25. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir.
It does show we can work together and pass some great legislation out of this Capitol. This takes wording out of House Bill 655, which was my bill, that requires the boards of education to post a poster in the different schools at eye level telling children that it's okay to tell, it's not okay to be abused, it's not okay to be hurt. Every day we pick up the paper and we read another horror story, and we've got to reach out every way we can to our children and grandchildren to let them know it's not okay to be hurt. It doesn't matter who it is that's hurting you. Speak up and call. And we've actually met with the people from Department of Family and Children's Services. Their toll-free number, the 855 Georgia Cares. When you call that number, you get a voice message and it goes through a menu. They've agreed to change that menu so the very first thing a child will hear, if you are a child and if you're in immediate danger, press 1 now. And this will connect them to someone live. Until Senator Kirkpatrick and I were working together on this, we didn't realize, you know, how that actually sounded but it goes on, and they've agreed to make that change. So I can't thank you enough for bringing your bill forward and allowing me to have mine put with it to protect our children and make things better for our servicemen.
Well, sir, I can't think of another addition to this bill for our children in this great state.
Thank you very much, sir.
And Representative Chandler, we are working on the sub, which I talked to you about. If you would just remind the committee just real quickly on, it's section 2 and what we're looking at, but it's your bill that's, I believe you heard, you just talked about it just a moment ago, did you not? Microphone. Are you 12? Okay. Okay. Now go. There you go.
It was, my bill, 7113, was, 450 was attached to 713.
Yes, ma'am. If you would just tell the committee a moment talking about yours. Your bill is attached to Senator Jackson's. Just a brief, you talked about a
354.
bunch.
354.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And it is just a bill that calls for allowing students who are ineligible to receive the Zell Miller if they, going into college rather than retroactively, if they have an SAT or an ACT at the 92nd percentile. That's it. Doesn't lower the standards, just allows them to have the money going in rather than retroactively.
Does any committee member have any question for Representative Chandler? What's the will of the committee? Got do pass. Do you have a second? Got all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. So this moves on the substitute to 354 LC 391943S. Did I say that right, man? Oh, good. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Senator. We
Thank you, Mr.
appreciate it.
Chairman. Thank you,
And
members of the committee. Thank you very much.
Representative Chandler, we'd like for you to carry this bill since you're retiring. We think this is your baby, and if it's okay, we'll help you. Senator will help you.
If,
Yes,
if
ma'am.
that's okay with the senator, we'll
Yes, sir.
leave that with
Yes.
him.
Yes, ma'am. Look to it. Thank you.
We'll talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. And our other senator, Senator Miller, come on up, have a seat with us, or stand up, whichever you like to do. So committee, you'll see in your packet, our substitute to 405, and it's LC 5990S. Before I do anything, though, Senator, would you mind just a point of privilege? I think your friend and, we got Chairman Earhart in here today, and I just, been a great higher education friend. Would you not agree?
I think there's no doubt about that. He and I go back a few years, 20 to be exact. The good news is, since he's now married, his wife is one heck of a cook. And I guarantee y'all, if she gets elected, you better go buy her cookbook, because my wife swears by it. The first one, she got 2 out. How was that commercial? How'd I do?
But I think
Somebody's got to support him if he's not here, so that's why I brought that up.
but the committee, I think let's just take a moment and thank Representative Earhart. We appreciate you.
I could have said he made me what I am, but I'm not going to do that, I can tell you that.
Oh, no, don't say that. Well, thank you. Thank you, Chairman
Yes.
of Higher Ed in the Senate. We appreciate you being here. If you'll just take some time and tell us about your bill, and I know committee members have questions for you, and we'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, I also have Representative Chandler's on my bill.
Yes,
also.
sir.
That's the addition to the substitute. I've been involved with the Southern Regional Education Board for a number of years, which I think is probably one of the best think tanks that we have for education in this country. And former Chairman Dixon was a member of it. Chairman England's been involved with it as well as Senator Hill and some other folks as well. And what we've done, we had some work done looking at where we are in Georgia as respects higher education. And we are the only state in the southeast that does not have a needs-based education program. And so I've worked on this for some time now, and in this particular bill, what we've done is we took the lower income of families, and we use a benchmark of family income of $48,000. And that affects a lot of Georgians for a family income of $48,000. And if a young person who's not eligible for HOPE, not eligible for Zell Miller, achieves a grade point average in high school of 2.3 to 2.99, and then there has to meet one of 5 other conditions, a certain SAT score, ACT score, or else pass a couple of AP exams with a 3 or an international baccalaureate exam with a 4, do a credential that's recognized, nationally recognized, then they would be eligible for a scholarship of up to $1,500 a semester as long as they continue to maintain that grade point average in school. This will be first-time students, and honestly, it will also apply to people that have the HOPE scholarship and they had a 2.3, which would be above, they have at least 3, but if they lose it the first year, they would still be, as long as they had a grade point of 2.3 in the university system, they still would be eligible for the $1,500 as well. There would be a program budget for each of the institutions on this program. We have a fiscal note. I believe you all have the fiscal note, do you not, Mr. Chairman? Yes. Okay, you have a fiscal note there.
It is in your folder, you can
Right.
find it.
And we anticipated that, if you start this program out, we're not funding it for this year. You can certainly do, I believe the number was, I think it was 3 million plus, I think they said for the first year, I believe. If you just did freshmen starting the program and then built it, if you try to do all 4 years at once, the number they give you is like $26 million. But I think what we would do would phase it in down the road with this. And interesting enough, they said, well, where's the money gonna come from? Well, one thing we do, Chairman Powell has a bill about internet sales, which I think is gonna be in the rules calendar. And we anticipate we could get a couple $100 million if we pass this particular bill. Bottom line is this, after 4 years, we can give, we think, based upon the analysis done by SREB, 28,000 young people will be able to take advantage of this program. And you could say, okay, number one, it's the right thing to do. But number two, from a workforce standpoint, we need, if we're gonna keep getting jobs in this state, we need to have people that are qualified. As wonderful as we are, they're not gonna keep coming here if we don't have people that have the necessary backgrounds. I guess one of the things that really got me when I looked at this information, because what happens is we're gonna be paying, with this program, people get the Pell Grant, which is $5,900. And so anything over and above for tuition and mandatory fees will be picked up by this $1,500. In Georgia, I'll use Georgia Gwinnett College, that's a pretty good example. In August, there's 13,200 young people registered for school. In September, it was down to 12,400. If you talk to your college presidents, they're gonna tell you, we lose people over $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. They don't come back, which is about one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, because we just spent $100,000 educating them through 12th grade, and we're gonna lose them for $800. We have the Panther Grants right now, which are one-time pop for $900 at Georgia State, was probably recognized nationally as one of the best programs in America for African-American students particularly. This program, quite frankly, is gonna make a big difference in the minority community. It doesn't affect the lottery, it doesn't affect HOPE, it doesn't affect pre-K down the road. Our universities, those that have the resources, whether it's Tech, with the Tech Promise, University of Georgia, they're setting up an endowment for needs-based as well as merit for, I think it's $2 billion is what they're trying to raise. But it's time for us to get serious about this, just from a workforce standpoint. And I will tell you that this will make a real difference in people's lives. And to me, everyone ought to have the opportunity. It's nice that the University of Georgia can do this, or Tech, but you get some of the other schools, they don't have that kind of resource base, okay? Not too many people at the University of Georgia's football team is a nice place to start as well, so, with all due respect to my friends from Tech. But I do think it's time that we do a needs-based program. We can phase this thing in. It's not funded for this year, but it's a good start. And, Mr. Chairman, that's basically the bill. And you know Representative Chandler's portion already, I believe, so no reason for me to comment on that. And I'd be happy to carry that as well.
So I have just a couple of questions. I'll kind of get it started. And is this, turn that down just a little bit. So you said it's not funded in any time, but what I didn't see, Chairman, was a link to any funding stream in this. And so it's kind of like it's there, but there's not a link to a funding stream.
That's true. I think that, I do believe that we're gonna do something down the road with Chairman Powell's bill on the internet. I also think, now I'm a supporter of the SSO programs, okay, and I think we're gonna probably, I think in the Senate, probably pass a bill that could have up to $100 million of tax credits. I think we're gonna pass that in the Senate at this point. And if we can do a program along those lines, I think down the road, we can come up with the necessary funding. You know, we have a $26 billion budget right now. With, Chairman Earhart can comment on this if he'd like as well. I think our enrollment right now is pretty stagnant in a lot of our colleges and institutions. So quite frankly, we build one less building in one of these campuses, I got $40 million just like that. And if we're gonna be doing more and more things based upon the trends we're seeing from a standpoint of online learning, I question, are we gonna have to continue to have the continual capital construction dollars that we're doing right now? So I think we can find the forces down the road. And I'll tell you what also, I say that to you because I think the business community is gonna demand it. And not for humanitarian reasons.
I saw the people behind you gasp when you said not build a building.
I think you just gotta start being realistic.
No, I'm teasing.
But you know, I mean, we're right now, I mean, some of us question some of the things we're building right now. Sure, I think so.
So the schools, you know, you brought out Panther grants, and from just your research, are most of the colleges and universities across the Board of Regents land doing some type of needs-based grant to help them, or what's the status of that?
I
Do you
think
know?
pretty much from what I could find out, it's the larger institutions that have the basis to do it. I do know, for example, if Georgia Gwinnett College could do it, which is an open enrollment campus, as you know, I think a lot of them just don't have, a lot of them are struggling just with the finances they have. As you know, over the last, and again, Chairman Earhart would know the numbers better than I have, we're finally back to what, 2009, 2010 funding levels for higher education, maybe? Yeah, with the formula at this point. So they just don't have the access to the dollars that they had. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's just where we are.
It's 29. Is that Representative Holcomb?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Senator Miller, who's my senator, I'm definitely supportive. I have a couple of questions.
Well, I forgot, can I add one thing? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I did not say this. I apologize. There's also in this bill a component that the student has to work at least 15 hours a week in order to get this grant. I apologize, I can't believe I didn't say that. Except unless they're participating in intercollegiate sport for that particular semester, because I think they're putting 15 hours in, whatever the sport happens to be. That was added by amendment on for the intercollegiate sports. But there is a work component, and that is new. That's, to my knowledge, not been done anywhere before. So I apologize. Excuse me, Representative, go ahead.
That was actually one of my questions. So I'll start with that of how did you arrive at the 15 hours? It seems a little high to me. Thinking back to my college days, I don't know that I would have gotten the grades that I did if I had 15 hours and I worked, but 15 hours is a pretty considerable amount of time. Can you give some context in terms of how that number was come up with, and would you be supportive of maybe a lesser amount that still requires work but still is more manageable?
I would probably defer on that to the committee's wisdom if they wanted to do less. I cannot tell you that it's not somewhat arbitrary. I think one of the things we have to remember, though, more and more of our students, the average age is no longer 18 years of age. And many of these students are still already working. And if you look at a weekend, if someone's working on Saturday, Sunday, whatever, there's 6 or 8 hours right there. So that was part of the analysis, is the fact that the average age probably on our university system might be 23 or 24 years of age anymore. I believe that's pretty close when I say that. So that was sort of the rationale before it too. But, you know, it's up to the wisdom of the committee. I can't say, there was no scientific reason for that particular number other than gut feel.
Okay, and with that, then it seems like you wouldn't know whether or not for students who were, for example, on work study,
Right.
if even 15 hours is available for most students, and that we certainly wouldn't want to put them into a box where they have a work study job, say at the library or something, but they only get 8 or 10 hours, and then they wouldn't be eligible.
This money would be on an institution basis, is how it would be allocated. And when they run out of money, just like the lottery and the Hope, that's it. And so the individual institution would be the one that makes the determination on, you know, what's available there at the school, whatever. So that's really gonna be up to them.
Okay.
And how the Regents Center would allocate the dollars out. That's beyond the scope of this.
Okay. My other question is a technical one, and it's just above the section on the work in lines 38 through 41, and it's about the tax aspect or the income,
Right.
which I get it that it's 48,000 below. And what's interesting is that it excludes, or rather includes into the calculation, municipal bond interests, which my guess would be probably most families that are in this category don't have municipal bond interest to begin with. They don't likely have a lot of extra savings to invest in muni bonds or otherwise. But how would we determine that? My understanding is that that income is not taxable for federal tax purposes, so it's not included on a Schedule B of a Form 1040. So how would that even be evidenced?
I can't answer that except the fact this definition came based upon, from Ledge Council, based upon how we do our other financial aid things. That's where that definition came from.
Okay. Do you know of anybody who could answer that question?
I guess, I assume maybe legislative council could, we'd get an answer, but I just don't know the answer to that particular question. That's a
Okay.
definition that is used, I think, throughout the system, for lack of a better term.
Okay, thank you.
Talking on that particular section, in line 44.
That could be the Pell Grant definition too. I have a feeling that's from the Pell Grant, is how they define income. I think that's probably where it's from.
Yeah, I looked at, just thought about it in a practical matter, as he was mentioning. On the work study, how are we going to keep track of that? Who's going to report? Who's going to report to? How is that? Are we going to have somebody have to come back and check that and audit that? Those numbers, Senator, that's one of the questions I had, and I hadn't asked you that.
I will tell you, if you notice that there's no definition of work in this bill, that's gonna be up to basically the Board of Regents, how they wanna define it. And I will tell you, from a reporting standpoint, I don't think that's gonna be that big an issue for the schools. I mean, they've gotta, I'll use the term justify, for all the financial aid that they do one way or the other. And, I think they can keep track of that. I don't think that'll be an issue.
Okay. Next is 28. Is that Ms. Gardner? Pat?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Miller, for bringing up this issue, which, as I understand it, was the original idea behind the Hope Scholarship, was to help get young people who couldn't otherwise go to college to have an opportunity to go to college. And I really hadn't read this before, and I assumed you were making this part of the HOPE program.
No, it is not. Absolutely not, because if I did that, it wouldn't go anywhere.
Well-
Because I'll call Hope a third rail. That's why it's not part of that, particularly for that reason. Between that and pre-K.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned at the beginning the SREB. Is this a recommendation from the SREB?
Yeah, they in fact, the study that we've been working on, it's still in process, was funded by the Gates Foundation. And we were, I'm on their board, several of us are, and,
Of the Gates Foundation
no,
or
on
the
the
SREB?
SREB. And what we did was we had a $400,000 grant from them in order to do the analysis work that was done on a lot of this stuff, where we came up with these particular benchmarks. Why the 48,000? We started at 30, we went 48,000 and other, and up accordingly, and found out that we thought this was the greatest area of need, 48,000 and less.
So this reflects that report?
Yeah, the report's not done yet, it's still in
I
process.
understand, yeah.
Yes, ma'am, yes, that's correct.
Well, I think it's exceptional um,
Can we write that down, that she said that to me?
I'm very much in
There's-
favor
I'm
of some
sure she's-
needs-based scholarships in our state. What I'm confused about is, where's the money coming from?
As I said, we passed this legislation now. I think we can have sources down the road. For example, Chairman Powell's bill has a $200 million we're talking about we're losing every year, which is now sitting in Senate rules if we're down the road. I also think, and I've mentioned the part about buildings, we've got a $26 billion budget. If we don't have a workforce capable of doing work in this state, then we're kidding ourselves. We keep talking about putting our money where our mouth is in education. Well, it's not just K-12. It's people, I'm trying to see, we want to make people productive citizens. And this gives people the opportunity to be that.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I just find it perplexing to have such a bill with no funding source, so,
We also have an election coming up,
oh, really?
and I do believe that several of the gubernatorial candidates believe that this is very important as well. And again, I think this is this is pretty much a bipartisan issue that it's workforce development.
It's hard to argue with that. I just wish we were coordinating it with the Hope Scholarship somehow. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, 18.
Hey, Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator, I appreciate your hard work on this and appreciate your commitment to education. But I did want to remind the committee and you that the state of Georgia does have a needs-based scholarship called REACH. I'm sure you're familiar with our REACH
Yeah,
program, and we got some scholars that are graduating this year for the first time and going on to college with those scholarships. So just didn't want to overlook that great program
that's
that we got, and I certainly love to build and expand that program for a lot of needs-based folks, children in our high schools going on to college with that program.
You know, you're right. The governor's got this. The problem is it's pretty limited in the scope. And the reason why we didn't use REACH as a vehicle to maybe try to do this down the road, the locals have got to contribute to it. And if the locals don't have the money, it doesn't happen. And unfortunately, that's the rub, is the fact that if the locals, particularly our school systems now, if they can't put the money in it, then it's not an equal access for everybody in the state. That's the best way for me to put it that way. It's the systems that have the resources can do that, and only certain kids can get it. But you're absolutely right. But that's the rub. That's why I'm looking for a different route. And there's nothing. It's a great program.
Yeah.
I think the young person gets a scholarship for up to I think it's $10,000 if my memory serves me right. Yeah.
Almost
So again,
20 when it
uh,
matched.
Yeah. Through.
That's all. Thank
No,
you.
but you're
Thank you,
absolutely
Mr.
right.
Chairman.
And thank you.
Have 21. Right, here we go. Vice Chairman Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have several questions I've kind of jotted down here. Where did the 2.3 come from? I mean, how did y'all arrive at 2.3 being the
We looked
minimum?
at some other programs throughout the southeast and sort of used that as a benchmark. It could have been a 2.5, 2.3, 2.5 in that range. That's where it came from based upon what we're looking. And it could go as low as 2 points. Nope, we're not going to give a scholarship to anybody making not at least a 2 point. And sort of, if you would, split the baby there, if you will. And again,
Do you have any fiscal breakdown for? I take it that your fiscal note is at the 2.0. I'm sorry, the 2.3 to 3.0. Do you have any numbers on if it was 2.5, 2.7? I mean, any numbers on that?
no, again, I think I gave you the rationale why we used the 2.3, based on just looking at what other states have. We had. I'm trying to see if I've got anything in my notes here, so bear with me a second. They go through in the fiscal note, they talk about some things. I'm seeing if there's anything else in here, which I do not think there is.
And then on a similar track, the SAT, the 480 and 530 numbers, where did those come
That
from?
came basically on research done by SREB, thinking that if they can attain these numbers, they're gonna be able to attain this grade point average going forward.
So you had talked a second ago, we were talking about the Pell Grant. Is that $5,900, is that per semester or per year?
No, that's an annual grant.
So it's an annual
Yeah.
$5,900?
I think it's 5920. Chairman probably knows. I think it's 5920 is what the number is.
Okay, and here's, I mean, where does financial aid come in? I mean, as far as I'm trying to figure out the most appropriate way to word this. I mean, I I can speak from personal testimony. I mean, I have 6 digits of student debt,
All right.
and where does I mean, as far as are these students? Do you have any information about whether or not they've attempted to receive? I mean, as far as you had said, this came about because of the $800,000-$900,000 difference that then is causing folks to, I guess, drop out of higher ed. And do we know, what the deal is with
Sure.
with student loans
I'm gonna
and
give you an
financing? Mm-hmm.
I've got Georgia State University. Someone making $30,000 and less. The idea of this whole model was a shared responsibility. You got the federal government, you got the institution, you got the state, you got the student, okay? All with skin in the game. That's the reason for the work thing. I promise you, a family making less than $30,000 can't do much of a contribution, number one. If you look at somebody making less than $30,000, the unmet need is probably about $9,500 for them. That's at Georgia State. Middle Georgia, probably about $4,800.
But what about their ability to get, to obtain student loans? I mean, which is what I did. Probably other people
I
on the panel have done the same thing, and I
Remember-
pay it every month. It hurts.
Remember what this money's going for.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm giving $1,500 for is for mandatory fees and tuition.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing for living expenses. It's nothing along those lines. That's what the loans are going to be for. They're going to have loans as well as doing it. $1,500 isn't going to get somebody through our systems, trust me. But it helps.
Mm-hmm.
And when a kid's dropping out because they don't have $1,000, it can make the difference.
But if they're dropping out because they don't have $1,000, can they not obtain?
They're maxed. They're maxed on their loan capability.
So they're maxed out on their loans.
That's correct.
What and tell me how this would work with do they have to be does their enrollment have to be, do they have to carry a full load of classes, and like what would happen if they dropped classes mid-semester? How does this work with that?
Well, again, they're going to have to maintain the grade point average. You're not going to have it for more than a 4-year program at this point. That's the intent of it. Is the fact that they were trying to do with this program. And again, understand whatever we pass here in the legislature, the Board of Regents is going to establish rules and regulations. Okay, they're going to be the one that sets up how this really works. Our idea is to give a mechanism to go forward with needs-based aid. That's the intent of this bill. The details are going to be worked out by the Board of Regents. And its particulars, here's the criteria, here's this, here's that. They're going to do that. I'm not in the micromanaging business here. What I'm trying to do is set up a vehicle so they can do needs-based aid. They can't do it right now. We can't do needs-based aid. That's the bottom line. If we put a statute out, it gives them a vehicle to use. And I don't know anybody in the Board of Regents that'd be against this bill. I don't know any college president that'll be against this bill.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
I just have one question. I was just thinking, if the Hope Grant, especially at TCSG and Access,
Right.
That the bottom requirement of that is a 2.0. Is it not? It is.
That's 2.0.
So I think the beginning student that you're talking about, I think I've always had a lot of pride in what, we've done with TCSG and BOR, and really making at those levels free. tuition-wise.
Well, we haven't raised the tuition, I don't think, in 5 years for the but again, this isn't for the technical colleges.
Well, I mean, but a lot of those, we take classes there to go to step into.
Yes,
Higher
some do,
ed.
some do. But then we have the people that go to Georgia Perimeter College out where I live, or where Scott lives, okay? And now Georgia State. They're not going to the technical colleges.
Right. Well, I just want to make sure the committee knew that there's an opportunity out there
Yeah, there is for in the technical college, absolutely.
for people to gain access that may not be able to get in the workforce.
But again, what I'm saying to you, I guess, is, and what I've found in talking to these college presidents, it's this amount of money, okay, that can make the difference for these people. And
I've got number
I'm not
s-
saying this is a panacea, but I do know this, other than the REACH program, okay? There's something wrong, folks, when we're the only state in the South that does not have any needs-based aid. We got to look in the mirror. Like who, and again, the future workforce, particularly in the minority community, if we don't get these people educated, we're going to have to pay them for them down the road if they're not productive citizens.
Yes, sir. Number 16, who's,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, thank you for bringing this and for all the data that you bring to the table. There's a lot of things that I wasn't aware of that you've said. I have two brief questions. So
Sure.
the first, you mentioned that other states
Yes, sir.
have similar programs.
Right.
And I think, is there any data, or do you have any data that can show that, in particular, this amount or this setup has actually moved the needle and has been, for lack of better terms and for ease of this conversation, well received and actually doing, you referenced just a minute ago, putting folks through an education, getting them a degree and putting them in the workforce. Do we have enough data yet from some similar states to find that?
Probably the Oklahoma Promise is one of the better things. I'm going off my memory. It's interesting. In order to get financial aid, you have to fill out a form, FAFSA,
FAFSA,
right?
correct, yes, sir.
Right now, in Georgia, we rank 47th, and this is not good, for the percent of state seniors that have completed a FAFSA. With 30.6% of our seniors have filled out these forms. Tennessee, which also has a program, they're up to 69%. The Oklahoma Promise is another one. A lot of it's awareness, okay, probably. A lot of it's opportunity. But I can be happy to, I can get you the information of SREB, but they've got it on the various programs. The Oklahoma Promise jumps out at me. I forget the name of what we call the Tennessee one, off the top of my head, but that's been very well received. Those are a couple that just jump out at me, just
Sure.
based on the research. I mean, I can promise you that, in fact, here's Senator Powell's bill right here, the 200 million I was talking about.
Sure,
in my
and-
file.
and
But again, we could get that information.
Thank
sure.
you, Senator.
But the
Mr.
answer is yes.
Mr. Chairman, one more brief question. I think a lot of my questions have been stated already, and Senator, I'm going to be fairly direct with my next question. I'm the grandson of Polish immigrants who survived work in concentration camps during World War II. They came to this country with a box that this chair wouldn't even fit in. I understood that hard work and the American dream go hand in hand. 2.3, I have a real problem with us discussing a much lower GPA. That was never the standard in my household. It isn't with my parents today. I'm 36 years old. I assure you my mother's watching and will critique whatever I've said when we're done. But that was the work ethic that was passed to me, that you do your absolute best. I'm trying to teach my two boys that now, but a 2.3 to a 2.99, that's very concerning to me, that we are offering. I agree that we have needs-based across a number of entities, but the SAT scores, the ACT scores, the grade point average, I'm not sure that I can get behind rewarding, if you will, that. And that's not a slight on you or anybody who's worked on this. I would just love a comment.
My comment would be this. You're probably like me. You came from a two-parent family. Okay, you went to school every day and probably had breakfast before you went to school. You came home and your parents made sure you did your homework. A lot of the people I'm talking about here, they've got to where they are in life because of their own initiative. And there's never been a bill here where we've required somebody to work 10 or 15 hours a week. I got everybody with skin in the game on this, okay? And for a young person, particularly someone that comes from not the environment you and I came from, is it 2.3, 2.5? Heck, I don't know what the right answer is. I know one thing, though. I want to give them an opportunity. So if it's 2.5, that's fine, too, with me. I don't have a problem with that. We used a 2.3, okay? But at the end of the day, 20 years from now, when this kid gets out because of this, it's going to make a damn difference if he had a 2.3 or a 2.5. It's going to be, he had the opportunity. So I think a lot of it, we've got ourselves, I guess, put yourself in the other person's shoe. And you know, my dad was an immigrant as well, okay, so I get it. But nevertheless, we can't continue down the path we're on right now to have the workforce that we're going to need. We've got more and more people on our welfare rolls. We got a work component in this, folks. We're just starting to do that at the federal level when it comes to Medicaid, Medicare, et cetera. What's Kentucky, I think, did the Medicaid thing? This is unique. Everybody's contributing this. Nobody's being just given something. So I guess that's my passion on the subject.
Sure, I appreciate that, and I hope you understand mine as well.
Absolutely.
I
If it's
just-
2.5, I don't care if it's 2.5.
Yeah, and if I got final say, I'm not telling you I could pick a number that would be right, and I do appreciate that there's a work factor in there. I just think
I
that,
mean, we don't require that for the hope. Okay?
Right.
We don't require it for the hope.
and I feel like that those students, myself included, I busted my hind end to earn that.
By the way, we don't require an ACT or SAT in the hope either. So we go ahead and give them a 3-point grade point average. You want to tell me a 3-point after they beat up the teacher and go to the administrator because Johnny doesn't get the 3-point, they get the B at the end of the day? Well, guess what? I got an ACT, SAT component in here, or an international baccalaureate thing, or else an AP with a 3 or a 4. So quite frankly, some would say this might be a little stricter, excluding the grade point average.
Excuse me, Representative Chandler, the 12, I believe.
Thank
Remember,
you,
this is
Senator.
This is our bill.
I know I've got to be careful what I say now, hadn't I? But I know you're familiar with the FSEOG. And, you know, that's up to $4,000 when there's unmet need after the Pell Grant.
Right.
But I don't know how many schools in Georgia participate in that program. Do you have any
I do
idea?
not have the answer on that.
I wonder if anybody would, because I think all schools don't participate, but for those that do, that's another $4,000.
No, but understand, okay, this is limited to tuition and mandatory fees. And a lot of the money you're talking could be used for other things. Okay, people got to live, folks. I mean,
that's
we
right.
stop and think about this. The average, when I told you Georgia State, the people that we're talking about from an income standpoint, even after everything, they've got a five. There's a reason student debt in this state is average after 4 years is $30,000. People got to live. All we're doing is helping them with the tuition and the fees here, and not their living expenses. But the average student debt in the state's I think it's 28,000. Maybe I rounded a little bit too high. But my point, they're walking out of here with debt that they've had to borrow money for. And a lot of these people are not 18 years old. Did you go to college when you were 18? I did. Okay, and guess what? I had mom and dad behind me. These people, when they're 23, 24, they don't have mom and dad behind them. So that's where it is.
Ms. Marie Metz, right here.
I'll be brief, Senator Miller. I just want to thank you and your committee for bringing this much-needed initiative forward, needs-based grant. You're looking at someone who's spent almost 40 years in the historically black colleges. And another question I was going to ask about, have you checked other programs? And I think that was, you said that, you did. And also there was some research that was done. I think you said SRE.
SREB.
You're probably talking about Southern Regional
That's it. Southern
Education
Regional-
Board.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
I
You're-
broke my own rule and used an acronym. I apologize.
Okay. I am presently, and I have been doing it for many, many years across the state, because through my church, I have worked with high school students and college students for many, many years, and I am presently counseling some students from Douglas High School, and one in particular, I have been working with her ever since she was 3 years old. The mother left. 3 kids, and the father have taken care of those kids. She's a senior at Douglas this year, straight A student. Father leaves home 4 o'clock in the mornings, work 2 jobs to take care of those kids. We're talking about needs-based grants now. And when you refer to the 2.5, that seems low, the 2.9, but for the kids that I work with, that's a nice average. Trust me when I tell you. Some of them have to work to help their parents. See, I see both sides of the spectrum. Having been at the college level and in business in this town, 3 businesses for all these years, I have seen it. So thank you, Senator Miller, for bringing this much-needed initiative forward. And by the way, my straight A, she is trying to decide now between the University of Georgia, Georgia State, and some historically black colleges. Okay. So I'm still working with her. And she's trying to make up her mind, but she hasn't heard anything about any grants or anything. So I'll be talking with you about that particular situation. Again, thank you
This
for
may cost
bringing
me
this.
$1,500, that's okay.
Okay.
Well, thank
So
you for
thank
being her mentor, Miss Marie.
Thank you.
She doesn't know how lucky she is. Next, I have 27.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, thank you for bringing this bill. And I've looked at some of the Georgia State data that attracted Bill and Melinda Gates. And actually, Bill Gates visited Georgia State, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And one thing that they showed me, and I want to see if this is your understanding too, is when they mine big data at Georgia State, they can predict student performance. And they said the number one correlation of student performance is not your high school GPA or your SAT or your ACT score. Rather, it is your family's financial ability. And the more unmet financial need you have, they can predict you will probably do less well in school, and that is even a bigger predictor than what your GPA or SAT score was. Is that your understanding too?
I think that no one can agree with that or disagree with that fact. I mean, income matters, okay? We see that. I mean, I worked when I was in college, okay? And both my parents worked to get me through college.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 parents. Just like what she just said, that there's three siblings, right? 3 siblings in the family, she said. Folks, half the people in this country only have 1 parent, okay? That's where we are today. I mean, let's do a little reality check here, okay? It's not the world I grew up in. So how are we gonna deal with it? So you're absolutely right, yes.
And then the follow-up, Georgia State increased their graduation rates by over 22%, and one of the main components of that was offering grants of about $1,500 a semester to
Well,
some
the Panther
people.
grant's $900 that they do, and Georgia State, along with Florida State, nationally, have probably 2 of the greatest mentor programs in America, and a lot of schools and universities are modeling themselves. In fact, one of the discussions I've had with the Board of Regents, if that's the case with Georgia State, I hope we're doing this at every college in this state. Yes. We're not. But they are nationally recognized for their mentoring program. Because there isn't an adult there to help some of these people. And one of the reasons why the combination with Georgia Perimeter College, with its, I'll be kind, 12% graduation rate, and I'm probably being overly kind, was the fact that they would hope Georgia State, by combining with them, can bring that down to that level and increase that particular graduation rate. The other thing, too, I think we got to remember, too, with the Hope Scholarship Program, as I said earlier, the average over the last 5 years, I think, if you got the Hope Scholarship as a freshman, at least 40% of those kids lose it the first year. Again, just based on a 3-point grade point average when you come out of high school. But 40% of those kids on the average lose the Hope Scholarship. And like, I went to the governor on it. two governors, two Republican governors. So why don't we put an ACT, SAT component to get the Hope? And they said, well, Governor Deal said it best to me. He says, now that we got them in school, let's try to figure out a way to keep them in there, Fran. I said, yes, sir. And as I walked out the door. So, that's where we are.
Thank you.
Next be Ms. Gardner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I can underscore more eloquently either of these two colleagues who talked about the importance of needs-based scholarship help in our state. If we want to bring up the kids that we want in our workforce who might not otherwise get this kind of education, this is a really important piece of legislation. But I pushed my button because I wanted to ask a question. In your full committee meetings in the Senate, did you have the Board of Regents? And I mean, we haven't heard from.
They are totally supportive of this bill. They have no problem with this bill whatsoever.
Okay, I just didn't.
No,
I haven't heard from.
No, there's been no. No, in fact, our former chancellor, Chancellor Huckabee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he really campaigned on this, if you will. And current chancellor and the other people, they're fully supportive of this. They would welcome this.
For all the reasons that Representative Dreyer just mentioned, thank you. Thank you for bringing this bill. I hope we find some money to do it.
And just to add, Ms. Gardner, they haven't been in contact with me either yay or nay on this bill. Be Chairman Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My former colleague that went over to the other side.
The dark side.
The dark side. We always. Have you figured out the rules over there yet?
I know the rules in your house, but go ahead.
No, seriously, I want to get back to the bill.
Sure.
You know, I know there's a lot of emotional stuff that are flowing around with education, and I think there's nobody that's on this committee that would not agree that it's very important and that Georgia has done so much as a state to make sure that people get an opportunity to go to college. But as I look back at this bill, I want to get back to what the bill does. And again, the grant that you're putting in would be for tuition and books and fees, I guess?
Mandatory fees,
Okay.
not books.
Not books. Okay. Well, my number's going to be a little bit wrong. But the other thing that I want to make sure that I'm understanding, and this may be relying on the chairman and the chairman of appropriations, but when we start talking about grade point averages, the grade point averages that are in this bill are probably only allowing a student to enter into an open access college. In other words, I keep hearing Georgia State mentioned. According to their freshman requirements, they've got to have a high school core GPA of 3.2 to 3.7 to get in. And their SAT and critical reading and math tests taken after March of 16 have to be anywhere from a 1030 to 1230. So as I read this bill and I look at the requirements here, both as a GPA requirement and then the part of the bill that is looking at the combined score of SAT and reading mathematics, I think making the analogy, I just want to make sure that this committee is getting back to what the bill does and not what
That's
we
fair.
want it to do.
Right.
Okay, because in this in university system, we have different levels of colleges with different missions, research.
That's correct.
So I want to make sure our discussion is a fair discussion about what this does. I was looking at, and again, this goes back to the question of what are we actually paying. So when we get back down to the schools, that a 2.3 to 2.9 average student with SAT lower than that, we're really going back to open enrollment type schools. And just, again, I want to make sure my numbers are right because I want to make sure that we evaluate this bill in, correctly and in context of what it's trying to do. But for Gwinnett, Georgia Gwinnett College, tuition was $3,800 to $3,844 a year. Fees were $1,714, and I even added in the book fee. This is off the internet, so
Right.
that's a $5,948. If you subtract books out, then it's going to be $4,600. Gordon College, which is in my
district is, the total with books is 5,400, and then Georgia Perimeter, I think, was 3,800. This is the annual tuition, full-time, books and fees. So again, I want to make sure that we're looking back at what we're trying to do, because if we're talking about University of Georgia,
We're not.
you know, Kennesaw, which I heard mentioned, Georgia State, any of these universities that have requirements, it's not in there. So that's where I think we need to go back and focus on the bill, because then you go back and, you know, we want to make sure that at that point, we're looking at really what these students you're trying to accomplish with, you know, not books, fees and full-time tuition. Okay?
We've got, I think 17 of the 29 institutions would fit this bill at this point in time.
Okay. And again, I didn't.
I think
Yeah.
17 out of 29.
Yeah.
And based upon those numbers and where we were looking, that's where, when they did the math, they came up that we could, after 4 years in those institutions, we could have up to 28,000 students.
And again, I'm not,
No, that's
I
fine,
want to
but
make
you're
sure
right,
that this
but you're
committee is focused back
absolutely
on where it is, because
No,
I've
you're
had a
not
lot
gonna be able
of
to go to all institutions with this bill.
anecdotal, stories up here. In fact, your straight A student is, quite frankly, if Georgia's got hope and probably a lot of other scholarships, probably a very brilliant person and full ride, and probably people are going to absolutely welcome and compete for that kind of student to come to their college, which congratulations, thank you for that. But I want to make sure we're going back, because at that point, I think we need to come back to what, and this may be what my question is for the chairman and for my friend Senator, is what is the average cost of these universities?
All right.
And then, you know, we've got Pell Grant that is, what, 57.75?
59.20?
Yeah, a little bit more. So, again, I'm trying to figure out what we're, you know, plus, and again, I'm not the expert on this, but I heard that there's some reach, what was it?
Yeah, the reach.
Chairman Dickey, the reach. In other words,
One-time pop,
okay.
$10,000.
But again, what I want to make sure that we're not doing is, and we see this in other committees, and I know in Ways and Means we try to do this, we make sure that people aren't gaming the system from a perspective of, you can go out there and work 2 or 3 different, incentives or grants to make sure that somebody is not out there getting them all. And I don't see anything in here that would either prevent that, and I just want to make sure that we're all clear that just with the Pell Grant, that's going to cover pretty much in all the cases I looked at, tuition, books, and fees for a full year.
Can I give you some numbers?
Mm-hmm.
People making $30,000 to $48,000. Full cost of attendance, Georgia State University, $25,500. Tuition and fees, $8,600.
Wait, Senator, we're not talking about Georgia State, though. We just said that Georgia
But
State
bear with me.
University.
I'm going to give you a couple
Okay.
just as an example. But I don't believe every 50,000 kids at Georgia State, trust me, at Perimeter College, they do not have 3.2 grade point averages. I don't-
No, I'm saying that Georgia State, that freshman would not be admitted in or could not get into Georgia State College with the requirements in this bill. Georgia State University, I'm sorry, couldn't get into that college.
But what I'm telling you, the 50,000 students at Georgia State, including the Georgia Perimeter College, they do not all have 3.2 grade point averages. Trust me. I don't care what the internet's telling you. But can I give you some numbers when you ask me that question? I'm going to give you several schools, if that's okay. Oh, let's do Middle Georgia State University. With a family making $30,000 to $48,000. Full cost of attendance, $15,000. Tuition and fees, $3,400. Student aid, Pell and institutional. Pell is $3,700. State and institutional, $1,600. Work, $4,700. That's what they estimated the 15 hours were worth $4,700 on an average. Expected family contribution, $1,600. Unmet need, $3,700 for a particular year. That's at Middle Georgia.
What's the need?
And I had several other schools as well. But you're absolutely right. It's it would not, they wouldn't work for every school, obviously. And you've raised a very valid point.
So, again, a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, and I'll, but again, I want to make sure we're, what's the purpose of your bill? If we have some of these needs that you're talking about, if we've already got grants Pell Grant, Reach, things like that are out there. Are you trying to come in and make up for this is room and board, that sort of thing? Is what this is supposed to do?
If you look at the total cost of what someone goes to school, the $1,500 can go for the tuition and the mandatory fees, and they can use that $1,500 for something else. In this particular case, probably living expenses. Georgia Gwinnett College, open enrollment campus. When the president of Georgia State tells me, okay, this bill is really important to him because of these kids that don't have the $800 or $1,000, and it would fit for his camp. That's what he has told me. I'm not doing a very good job answering your
No,
question.
I'm trying to get at one. There's a need, I grant a need, but
Correct.
But if we've got kids that are usually at this point, they've got family, they're working at home, they're doing those things. Is that kid going to Middle Georgia College or going off for room and board? I'm trying to get at. We've got grants out there. Pell Grant can cover what? Anything?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah. You get $5,900, and unfortunately, people go out and buy cars with it. That's another story. As the chairman's nodding his head.
So, and then you got Reach, that is a one.
Yeah, but Reach is very limited. It's like, what, how many kids? 20? Yeah, small. 2,300 kids, maybe?
So what else?
Maybe 2,300, something like that, 2,000? And the local system's got to participate or else it doesn't work.
But again, I'm trying to make sure that whatever aid is out there, that we're not going above and beyond. And then we've got people who are gaming the system. I have heard instances, even at my college down at Gordon, where we've got a lot of kids that think they want the traditional college life, and Gordon State College is a great college, academics, but we had an influx of people coming in there, and after 1 or 2 semesters, they really wasn't there for academics. They wanted a college life, but they didn't get it. So they were spending a lot of money, and you were seeing them drop out at 1 and 2 semesters.
All I can tell you, Representative, after 4 years, we think there's 28,000 people in this state, based on the research, that could use this program. And if they go to certain particular schools. I will tell you, nobody's getting rich off of $1,500 for a semester. But these people, keep in mind, we've got requirements in this bill that we don't do for anything else. We've got over and above just a grade point average. We've got a requirement they gotta work. And if you get a 3-point, and 40% of them lose it after the first year, I think that's about $250 million last time I checked, that we just threw down the drain for those 40% that didn't make it. And yet, I guess I look at it from the perspective that a lot of us had opportunities a lot of these kids don't have, like the person she's talking about. And that's what I think, yes, I think a lot of people will use this program for the minority community, however you want to define minority. Whether it's Hispanic, whether it's African American, you name it. And I think that's, quite frankly, if we look at demographics, okay, that's where the growth of our population is going to be over the next decade. More so in the Hispanic area than Caucasians, for example. And we don't want to talk race, fine, I'll talk race, because that's where the numbers say they are. And we got to be able to have an educated workforce. And for me, that's what, although I think it's the right thing, but that's not a real reason to just do it. Thank
You're
you.
getting down to
But you raised a very valid point, thank you.
just a few blinking lights left. Representative Kelly, 22, is that right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly understand the goal that the senators brought with us today, but I think as we've heard the committee and the questions that were raised throughout our debate today and through Chairman Knight, I think there's some questions about what the work requirements would actually look like. And I think there's some concern about not having a funding source. So, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to table for us to have an opportunity to evaluate this and get a little more well-versed on some of these questions.
Okay. This committee knows a motion to table takes precedent over any other motion that's out there. Is there a second for that motion? Second, Chairman Dickey. Any discussion? I believe I'm not, I'm past what I've ever done before. Chairman Earhart, so we ask for discussion on this like we would for any other bill?
No, it's not discussion.
It's not discussable?
No.
Okay, those all in favor for tabling it, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
I believe the ayes have it by the chairman's discussion or thought. And so that sets that down for right now. Chairman Miller, I'm sorry, but I think you got your work to convince some other folks of what we're doing here.
Well, you know, one of the things, can I make a concluding remark?
Certainly.
It's not if, but when we do this. All this does is set something in motion. We're not funding it. It gives the regents a chance going forward, because they're going to fill in all the blanks here, folks. We don't do that. Quite frankly, there's some people that probably don't like it that we're stepping on the regents' toes by just trying to do this. But I will assure you, go back and talk to your college presidents, okay? And this is a good framework to start. And you're not going to get a much better framework a year from now or 2 years from now. Because you know what? It purposely leaves the door open for the Board of Regents to make decisions. And, but that's the wisdom of the committee. I thank you for the hearing. Always good to see old people and some newer young people here. And I too commend Chairman Earhart for all his work over the years. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for your work on this bill. It sure is evident. Their meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Oops, that's yours.